So I'm going to tell you guys the secret that 99% of artists and producers don't know, and that's why they end up failing. Just to add some context, in my last two videos that I made before this one, there's some really important things that you should know. In the first video, I talked about why you can be both a musician and a content creator without it being stressful or annoying. I know a lot of you guys can relate to that because you're always saying, I'm an artist, I'm not a content creator, right? In the second video, I showed you how to use that advice and those tips that I gave to start building some real momentum in your music career. So if you haven't watched either of those videos yet, make sure you go back and do that right now. All right, so there was this statistic that I heard on a podcast while I was flying back to America on my honeymoon. It was an 11-hour flight, but I thought this was really, really interesting and I want to share it with you guys. So it said that 99% of success is systems. Now, what does that mean? Basically means that a huge majority of your wins will come from building systems and habits that lead to growth in your career. Now, it sounds obvious, but how does this exactly apply if you're an artist or a producer? I'll give you an example. So for the first 6 years of my music career, I worked my ass off every day making beats. That's all I did. From sun up to sundown, I was making beats any free time that I got. When I wasn't working my 9 to 5, I came home, I made beats until I went to bed. And even after I quit my 9 to 5, it allowed me even more time to dedicate to just getting better at my craft, right? Which I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing right now. Just making music, staying in the studio, putting it out, rinse and repeat. But here's the funny thing. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. Don't get me wrong, it was fun working with artists, making new songs, making beats, being in the studio. It was exciting, but I felt like I wasn't having those big career-shifting moments. And so one day I decided to try something different. I drove to Office Depot and I bought one of those big-ass whiteboards and hung it on my wall. If you go back to some of my old YouTube videos, you can see that whiteboard hanging on my wall, all right? And what I did was I just started writing on it. Wrote down goals, started writing down a daily schedule that I could stick to. I was giving myself some structure to do things other than just making beats, right? So Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, I dedicated to music. Those were my music days. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would focus solely on making content. And usually weekends, I was out at networking events or meeting people, out at open mics and shows and stuff like that, right? So I planned my whole next project, my next album, wrote down who I wanted to work with, and some milestones that I could work towards. For example, I want to gain 1,000 new followers on Instagram, right? And the most incredible thing happened after that. By the end of the year, I started checking off all of those boxes. And for the first time in my career, I felt like I was actually starting to do something, that my career was working. And that was around the time that I met Jaron Benton. I got signed to Funk Volume, and I quit my 9 to 5 job for good, right? And I realized it was because that I was giving myself some very, very clear direction in my schedule, right? I was building a system, essentially, and it was moving everything in the right direction. And so, moral of the story, one thing that you can start doing is just building a simple system throughout your day, right? Daily habits that get you closer to your goals. But one really important thing to keep in mind is that even after you start building these systems and these habits, it still takes time For me, it took years until I started seeing those big career shifting moments. For you, it could be more, could be less, right? But I think overall, people really underestimate how much time and how much repetition it takes to get really good at something and for things to start working. So the key is really start building these habits and systems in a way that already complements what you're good at. We're just adding some structure to it so that it's sustainable and it keeps you going and it keeps you accountable. So if all of this sounds simple enough, there's more good news. My full 0 to 100 Masterclass on stress-free marketing and content creation is going to cover a lot more information. This is just scratching the surface, all right? But I'm going to give you the full blueprint of what we just talked about. So I'm going to launch my 0 to 100 Masterclass in a few days. Make sure you're ready. Be on the early bird list. That's my biggest tip. I put a link down in the description, but because this masterclass is only going to be available to a small group of music creators, it's really important that you get on the early bird list so that you don't miss it, all right? In the next video, I'm going to show you the complete blueprint from beginning to end of how you can get into my masterclass and what else you can expect to see from it. So you definitely won't want to miss that video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.